friends, and welcome to another new episode of the Quest for Excellence series hosted by Intellectus Consulting. In today's episode, we will feature a very interesting and exclusive interaction with one of the senior business leaders of our industry who has been acknowledged by one and all to be one of the finest super specialty business leaders. Before I introduce him, a brief background of this distinguished gentleman. He has had over 25 to 26 years of industry experience and in the specialty care area of oncology and immunology. The first 13 years of his career were spent exclusively in the sales function, spanning different roles as a business executive, first line, second line, and national sales manager levels for companies of distinguished repute, such as Pharmacia Upjohn, Dabur, Ferring, and Zenotech. After his stint in sales, he then moved into commercial operations and was responsible for the outstanding launch and success of the oncology portfolio of Biocon Limited. As we all know, Biocon is the leader in biosimilars in this country across therapy areas such as oncology, immunology, and this gentleman was responsible for the success and successful launch of these molecules such as Abraxane, Canmab, and Biomab. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you Mr. Praveen Bose, who is a very distinguished business leader with over 26 years of pharmaceutical industry experience. At present, Praveen works for a super specialized commercialization platform company called Sayre Therapeutics as its Senior Vice President for Commercialization and Sales and Marketing Operations. So without much further ado, I would dive straight into the interview with Praveen. Praveen, good morning, and thank you so much for having, kindly consented to be a part of this initiative launched by Intellectus Consulting called the Quest for Excellence series. And as I had outlined to you in my invitation mail, this series is primarily addressed at, improving the standards of marketing excellence in our industry. And one of the objectives is to help young, upcoming, and budding pharma marketeers at various levels in their respective organizations to learn from successful business leaders, in terms of what it takes to achieve the highest standards of excellence. Because success is never easy, right? And it comes with a lot of hard work, with a lot of commitment, passion, dedication, but also a lot of, doing things right. So Intellectus Consulting, as you know, right since its, inception in 2018, has been passionately committed to driving, not only the capabilities building, but also, developing a greater understanding of the marketing role for brand management colleagues in the industry, through various forms, like, workshops, personalized coaching assignments, webinars, blogs, and also, industry-sponsored forums. So starting July, we have commenced on this series of, the Quest for Excellence, where we interview successful business leaders across pharma companies at various levels, at CEO, managing director, vice president, cluster heads, chief marketing officers, as well as business directors, who have achieved the standards of excellence and are considered as benchmarks in various domains. And those functional domains are essentially around leadership excellence, second is marketing excellence, third is brand building excellence, fourth is commercial excellence. Right. And what's important is these youngsters would also learn and get to know from the leaders as to what has shaped their careers and, what are the takeaways and home learnings that they can go away with which will help them evolve better in their career. So I thought I should set that context. And as you're already aware, because that's the only objective of our entire program or series. So thanks to you, Praveen, for giving me your time. This.
I should thank you, Shailesh, for inviting me to this great initiative. I mean, we have been interacting closely with each other over the past years as a part of the same organization, and also when you started on your own. And I was really impressed by the value add you're doing to this, this industry and our colleagues. And I feel really honored to be a part of this.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Praveen. It's really humbling to hear that. So, Praveen, let me kickstart this today's interaction by taking you back in your journey in the initial part of your career, right? And it's been extremely impressive. As I was telling the audience, there are very few people who've had an outstanding track record in building super specialty portfolios like oncology and immunology, and it would not be an exaggeration if I said that you are one of the oncology business leaders in the industry. That would be absolutely perfect. So you have spent, an early part of your career, almost about 13 years, I guess, in doing very consciously sales roles across wonderful, both a mix of MNC and Indian companies, right? Like Pharmacia, Upjohn, Dabur, Ferring, and and you took on various sales roles, and you were very successful in establishing the brands across the various markets. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions around this initial part of your career. One is, did you consciously decide to spend so much amount of time in understanding the sales function? Why did you do that? I mean, is it because you were wanting to mature and understand completely sales? And second, more importantly, I think our viewers would love to know what are the learnings on those investment of 13 years, which you then took forward when you took on commercial leadership roles later on in Biocon and Sayre. So that's what I would like to know.
Right. Yeah, I must start saying that I didn't come into this industry by purpose or by plan. Like many of us ventured into it because of the circumstances. I was reasonably good in studies, but I couldn't continue beyond my, those days, my graduation, and I had to look for a job. And I'm talking about 1992. And at that time, the easiest available at that time, was the job of a medical representative. Came into it, I didn't know anything about the industry, how it works. But what happened is, came into it, worked as medical representative for almost 6 months. Then I got into a company, Pharmacy and Upjohn. They were planning to come to India through their subsidiaries. So I got a chance to get into their super specialty selling segment, where I was the only one in charge of the state of Kerala. I hail from Kerala. So it was like a one-man army launching a concept product, establishing the scientific concept, and then building the brand there. So that was a good opportunity for me. I grew the ranks within the sales, but what it did as a good to me is that I got to know the basics of the industry, like the importance of understanding your customer insights, building relations with the whole ecosystem, all stakeholders beyond the doctors, contributing to the organization, whether it is in terms of achieving the sales, but also in terms of managing the sales more profitably, selling at a good realization value, taking care of the expiries, short breakages, all those aspects. So a sense of contributing to the organization, that was the biggest sense the gain I got from those initial days of my career.
Right. Oncology was still a very nascent therapy area about 25 years ago, and it only grew much after the biologics and the monoclonals came into the picture. So
absolutely.
And Pharmacia was obviously a very reputed organization, and later on went on to become a part of Pfizer. But What were your challenges? It would be interesting to know when you were initially launching that concept selling product, building that acceptance of the brand at the oncologist level. Could you share
Right.
some of those learnings that you had?
Right. I know in pharmacy and Upjohn, actually, I was not part of the oncology segment. My first taste of the oncology selling was in 1995 for a short period.
Right.
At that time, the entire setup was different. There were very limited institutes which are oncology specific, like the regional cancer centers or Tata Memorial Hospital, and some of the big institutes like AIMS, very limited, or Kidwai. It Doctors knew us by face, by name, because very limited number of companies operating, handful of companies operating there. But in pharmacy and Upjohn, my longest exposure was into the super specialty of neurology, infertility, gynecology. Again, concept setting products like we launched the first low molecular weight heparin in India
Right.
from pharmacy and Upjohn. It was, called
Fragment.
Fragment. It was Fragment. It was in 1993.
Right.
I mean, we were competing for, with the conventional heparin, which was selling at rupees 40, 50 per vial, versus the PFS of Fragment, which was priced at like 4,500, 5,000 rupees.
Right.
It was really fun. Sale was hard to come, but we were focusing on the science, establishing the concept, discussing with the doctors on what this product is, what is the need, what it addresses. So it was a slow, gradual progression, but it was enjoyable.
Right.
There were no shortcuts. It was not for a 1 month, 2 month, 1 quarter kind of a strategy. It was over a longer period.
Right. Right.
And my actual complete oncology stint started in 2000 when I joined Dabur Oncology.
Dabur Oncology. All right. All right. So, would it be fair to say that when you were in the sales function in a multinational reputed company like Pharmacia, one of the key learnings would be that you established the concept more than, and the real drivers of your business were concept selling through science, establishing the concept of low molecular weight heparin compared to the standard heparin with such a huge price differential. So creating a value for that brand, and through science and through studies, and more importantly, looking at the right set of customers for the brand and building those deep relationships is what you're probably referring to, right?
Absolutely. At your young age, it's important to learn to play within the rules, respecting the rules,
Right.
not taking shortcuts.
Absolutely.
That builds your building blocks, and then you build on that your career.
Absolutely. So then so your first major stint or exposure to the oncology therapy area came in Dabur, right? And I remember Dabur was, getting established through its branded generics portfolios of the Taxanes group like Paclitaxel, etc. If I remember.
Absolutely.
So could you take us through how was your experience from a MNC to an Indian generics player like Dabur?
Right.
How did you make the switch? What were the challenges, learnings around that? Yeah.
Interestingly, at those days, most of the brands Dabur launched were the first generics. And the interesting part was that the innovators were not in India at that time.
All right.
So it was again a continuation of the kind of selling we used to do with the MNCs earlier.
Right.
It was again brand building. For example, Intaxel was the first generic of Taxol, Paclitaxel.
Paclitaxel.
Dabur launched in India.
Right.
And the kind of effort behind it is almost like establishing an innovator brand.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Having said that, the biggest challenge in India, since the patients pay out of pocket, the biggest question is how can they afford such a expensive drug?
Yes.
Even today, I think this the landscape has not changed much. Still, the insurance has not started kicking in. It has not started covering most of the cancer patients. But that is that was one of the concerns. We had to make sure that no patient was rejected a treatment because they couldn't afford.
Right.
I mean, which has come to our notice. There were patient assistance programs in those days also, but our primary focus was for the clinician community to experience the brand,
Right.
and the patient, let them see the result
Right.
when they see their patients getting treated and getting the
Right.
results.
Right. So, if I understand you correctly, Praveen, some of the key areas or issues that you were dealing with were, one is you were the first brand of paclitaxel to launch India. So, it's virtually an innovative product launch because the innovator was not in India. So, the kind of
Absolutely.
the kind of preparation, groundwork that you had to do to prepare for the successful launch of Dabur's brand was as good as an innovator launch. I think that's one
Absolutely.
message
Absolutely.
brand managers of even Indian pharma companies need to know, that even if you're first in the market, give it that due diligence and seriousness and attention as much as if it were your own proprietary or innovator molecule, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can avoid uh, building your brand building initiatives on price alone, that's the first thing you have to keep in mind.
Right.
Talk about the concept, talk about the merits of the products, understand what your customer needs, for build your strategies based on that, addressing them.
Yes. Yes. So I think that's a very valid point, a take home for our audience. That is, give it the due diligence if you're first to market as much as it were an innovator molecule, because you never get a second chance. And
Absolutely.
the point I think is what you beautifully said is improve access of patients to the brand through either affordability or through access programs, so that more number of patients could experience the power of the molecule and could be
Absolutely.
successfully treated. So I'm sure you would have, that's the second message. And the third
Sure.
important message, I think what you have clearly mentioned, is that don't do the promotion on pricing. Talk about value creation, because the molecule is
Absolutely.
great and it's still great and it can offer a lot of better outcomes for patients, right? So
Absolutely.
these are some of the things that is very, very critical. The other important point, Praveen, is, did you get an opportunity? At that time, I think you were still in the sales function, right? Sales role.
Yes.
Did you get an opportunity to interact with the marketing folks at the headquarters and give your inputs on strategy building or how to promote, or did they ever take your feedback in terms of inputs so that they could build better brand planning strategies, etc.?
Yes. One thing I was interested in doing was to collect competitor information from the field,
Right.
and pass it on to the marketing team. I didn't know what was marketing at that time. In my initial days, I
Right.
mean, we used to see some of our senior folks working at head office telling us what to do, how to talk to the doctors, communicate. Those initial days, but
Right.
when we started understanding how important it is to formulate what we have to communicate to the doctors
Right.
through these communication plans, we understood that it is important we also feed them with whatever information we have
Right.
from the field.
Right.
And sometimes, one thing I still remember when I was in my earlier days in Dabur, I did was uh, I got hold of a list of clinical trials which are happening at that time, uh, you know going on globally for all the latest molecules, at what stage, what are they indicated for, all those aspects. I got hold of that data, and what I did was, I made CDs, many copies of CDs out of that, and then started giving to some of my doctors as a local strategy.
As a locus.
uh, but what it did to me was that doctors became closer to me, and they started interacting with me more frequently and more uh, meaningfully in terms of engaging in a conversation.
Absolutely.
It went beyond a mere sales call.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
was a very small step, but it helped me in a big way to become
So
closer to the clinicians.
So that means the third take home for our audience, Praveen, is what you're saying is when you are in super specialty selling or marketing a brand which is, have great outcomes and is influencing patients, make the calls value additive, right? It's not
Absolutely.
sales call, but add value to the call, do something more deeper and meaningful so that you can establish a connect with the customer, long term and sustaining and not transactional.
Absolutely. They should feel value in interacting with you, getting into an engage into a conversation with you. They should feel
Right.
value for that.
Absolutely. Praveen, let's come on to the big piece, and that is after your stint in Dabur and your learnings in sales, you came into India's most respected biotechnology company, that's Biocon. And I think you had one of the most amazing phases of your career, as we have always shared notes in Biocon over the decade, when you did some outstanding work, along with your team in establishing the oncology business of Biocon. What's amazing and surprising is Biocon was never known to the world as an oncology driven organization as much as it was a diabetes care organization because it had already developed and was marketing biosimilar insulins and other.
True.
So, I'm going to spend a considerable time understanding from you, how did you go about doing the entire launch work preparedness for these outstanding molecules like CanMab, Biomab, and even licensed products like Abraxane, because you were beginning on a clean slate. So you don't
True.
think to fall back on, etc. So what were the preparatory work that you did, is one thing I would love to know. How did you go about launching these products and these great brands, and what were the key learnings along the way? If you can share with us over the next course of few minutes, that will be great.
Sure. I must say that this was the most exciting phase of my career.
Okay.
Um, I was hired as the second employee of the division. Uh, so by the time it was towards the end of 2005, and I came on board on 2nd of January 2006. The business unit head was there at that time. I came into sales, but the opportunity I got was that since no one else was around, I was involved. I got an opportunity to be involved in each and every step until the team was onboarded.
Okay.
So in the next 3 months, we had a sales team and marketing team ready, handpicked from the industry. We had a mix of colleagues coming from MNCs, the top-notch Indian houses, uh, primarily oncology experienced. It was interesting because, as you said, Biocon was not a non-entity, not only among the clinician oncologist community, but also in the industry within oncology.
Right.
So it was an interesting phase to talk to each of those, candidates, then explain our plan, what Biocon is, and then get them on board. So in about 3.5 months, the whole team was on board by about March end. The launch was sometime in September, the launch of the first product. So the first 3-4 months, we used to meet the oncologists and establishing the brand Biocon. We didn't do anything else because the story of Biocon was really amazing, and we thought it was our responsibility also to make the community understand what Biocon is. So we told the story of the biotech research pioneering Biocon has done in India, how different it was, how challenging it was. So they got a sense that these people are serious. So that was done. Then sometime towards September 2006, Biomab was launched. It was not a biosimilar, it was a proprietary monoclonal antibody for head and neck cancer. The next challenge was no one was ready to believe that innovation, a proprietary product, could be possible from an Indian house. I mean, it it was interesting, um, but of course, it also comes with the challenges that it doesn't come with the global regulatory halo of global regulatory approvals.
Yes.
The back the back it is not backed by the global clinical data.
Right.
So it was on us to build all of these on the way as we go ahead with the launch, because we did the necessary regulatory clinical trials what was suggested by the DCGI. We completed that, we got the result, and then we launched the product. uh, you know we understood that for selling biomap you need more of heart than brain, because it is Indian innovation, make in India. That sentiment has to be understood and communicated. The scientists who have worked on this molecule in India, we had a partnership with the Center for Molecular Biology, Cuba. Their scientists were also here, parked in Biocon House, and then our R&D team was also working well with them. That conviction of Indian innovation and the conviction that this is one of the best engineered molecules in the world, that conviction was there. But that is not sufficient. It has to be passed on to the clinician community,
Right.
and the
Absolutely.
patients should feel that confidence,
Yes.
because it was an expensive therapy.
Right. Right.
The patient or the relatives who pay for that will have so many questions. So it has to be explained well, it has to be justified. So we realized that the selling was, you need more heart, understand that that conviction, you have that conviction, and then only it can be solved. We engaged the clinicians in building real world evidence, which is not an opportunity available for a MNC. It is an opportunity for an Indian organization. When you have the freedom of you know generating your own clinical evidence in partnership with the clinician, the oncologist, and then document it, publish it, these are opportunities. So Biomap was that story, Indian innovation. Abraxane was a different story. We launched Abraxane in 2007 end. It was a global brand. You have enough and more clinical evidence data from all over the world, across indications, across tumor types, different settings. But the crux was in getting the oncologists feel that product. Uh, giving access to the patients, because it comes at a premium cost. It used to come manufactured in the US. There was only one manufacturing unit, centralized unit in US, and we used to get it from there. It used to come at a premium. So again, making the doctors feel the product, giving access to the patients, and as a marketeer, you have to work within the global branding guidelines, marketing guidelines.
Right.
So how do you innovate in your marketing strategies? You
Right.
have limitations, but at the same time, you have to be innovative. There's no other go. So some of the initiatives we took in terms of coming out with projects like some biomarker projects, which are Indian patient specific,
Right.
was a result of such a constraint, I would say.
Right.
But it has clicked. It was appreciated. The data generated out of those biomarker projects was really, valuable.
Right.
So that was a different story from Biomap. And the third product, the third flagship brand was CanMab, the world's first biosimilar trastuzumab. That was launched sometime towards 2011. 2011, yeah. Again, the Indian innovation. It was world's first biosimilar. Uh, Doctors were waiting for an opportunity because of the prohibitive cost of the innovator brand. for the longest time. There were more patients who were eligible but couldn't afford than the patients who could enroll to the on the treatment. So at the same time, monoclonal antibodies, they are very challenging to be made consistent from batch to batch.
Right.
So it was the confidence we had because of our experience with Biomap. It was very palpable in our strategies and communications and approach towards the physician community, the patients, the caregivers, all those, the entire ecosystem.
Right. Right. So, Praveen, there are some nuggets of gold in terms of learning that you have just mentioned. And just to summarize what I heard with rapt attention was, when you are again the first biosimilar brand to launch like Biomab way back in 2006, you understood upfront that
It was a proprietary.
it was proprietary.
It was a proprietary.
The proprietary in-house, product developed in-house. I stand corrected. You still need to establish it with the clinicians community. And the way
Absolutely.
it was, Biocon as an organization was still not well known among the oncologist community. And so you spent the first 3 to 4 months like a pre-marketing phase of actually establishing the brand Biocon with the oncologist community so that
Absolutely.
you get an easier acceptance for the proprietary brand like Biomap when it gets eventually launched, which means in a way you were setting the stage or setting the platform for a successful launch. And this is something that marketers need to understand very well, that pre-marketing phase of a brand launch is as important or perhaps even more important than the actual launch phase. Because when you launch the brand, the community is already primed well enough to know that you're not an entity and you don't waste time in trying to then establish first your company and then your brand. You're already on a takeoff phase. And that pre-marketing phase, which is not seen much today, and I think that's where marketers need to know that you need to invest time in pre-marketing, in priming and
True.
developing scientific community.
True.
Very great
True.
point that you mentioned. I think the second point that you mentioned is it required a lot of heart more than the head, because you knew your inherent challenges, but you knew that you had to drive better successful patient acceptance, patient outcomes, and your best chance of success or was collecting real world evidence data, right? And I think today context, real world evidence, as we call it, even in the new era, is more important in the phase of marketing than it was, because you need to generate data. You need to
True. True.
and you need to present that, throw back that data, the clinician community, to build a greater acceptance around your brand.
True. Almost when I left Biocon in 2015, by the time we had more than 15 publications
Fantastic.
across journals, international platforms like ASCO, presentations, poster presentations, publications.
Amazing.
Uh,
Amazing.
it was a great phase,
Reviewed
actually. Great
journals
learning
as
for us also.
great learning and peer-reviewed journal publications as well as you
Absolutely.
yeah. The next piece, what you mentioned so beautifully, Praveen, is when you bring in a brand like Abraxane, which is a globally studied brand, very well, a lot of data, scientific evidence around the product, you still need to go out there and establish the brand with the clinicians community. Again, you did the real high science work, you built the patient forums, you did the right kind of work too, so that patients have greater access to the medication. Patients also are able to feel the power of the medication. You work with the patient community, you built in those networks as we used to discuss, and that took off on Abraxane as well. And then the final cherry on the cake, as you call it, was when you launched CanMab, right, towards the end of 2011, which was the world's first biosimilar trastuzumab. And by that time, I think 5 to 6 years of enough understanding of the oncology area gave you the understanding as to how do you actually prepare it for an even more successful launch, right? So it was not just
True.
opportunity, but it was also talking about doing head-to-head studies and doing a lot of patient evidence data around the molecule, right? CanMap as well. And so I think the industry actually was forced to sit up and take notice, right, Praveen? I mean, you built a franchise of over 100 crores in a very short span of time. You had all the medical oncologists on your favoring Biocon, and it was probably one of the best rides that the franchise had, isn't it, at that point of time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one time Biocon was ranked third among all the oncologist companies in India, and
Amazing.
was the fastest growing
Fastest growing.
Indian
Amazing.
organization.
Amazing. Amazing. And you were then as a vice president for sales and marketing, Praveen. I remember, right? So
I
it
was
was
yeah, I was a
senior director,
senior director, sales and marketing.
and you had marketing also reported to you. Now,
Right.
I would really be interested to know, Praveen, in this high turbo growth phase, how did you handle marketing? Because you came from an extensively sales background and you were new to the function. What it took you to come to speed? That too, handling the marketing of high-powered biologics. So, did you have to learn? What did you have to learn? And immerse yourself just from a professional standpoint. I just want to know how was your experience?
Right. Um, in Biocon, I was in sales. I mean, was only for a few months,
Right,
yeah, roughly a year, and then I moved into marketing.
right,
But what helped me there was, even today, I believe that the first and foremost thing marketeer should have is your customer insights. Understand your customer. My sales stint has given me an orientation towards that. I'm not a classical marketing guy at that time. I was not.
right.
Probably my approaches would have been at that time, or my thought process would have been not out of the classical textbook pages.
Correct, correct.
But what I started thinking from the clinician's perspective. What would they be interested in seeing from a company marketing team in terms of communication? How can we make them interested in engaging into a conversation with our sales team? How our communication will help them in interacting or treating better their patients.
Right.
Value, basically doing value addition in their efforts in treating their patients. So I was working on these three basics initially. Uh, but since my earlier days, I had a liking for reading about the product, understanding the product, and discussing that with the doctors. That has helped me. Um, so working on these three basics, I started making baby steps, I would say. I had my colleagues, my boss, to help me in coming out with really implementing, converting my ideas into real inputs and the communication strategy. So that's how I started, and then I've in about 3 years, by 2010, I got an opportunity to move to head both sales and marketing. That was a time when Biocon was looking for launching their immunology division. So I was given the opportunity to head the sales and marketing as a BU head, handling a P&L. That was my first experience of launching that. But again, a golden opportunity for me to be associated with the entire process of conceptualizing, ideating, operationalizing that division.
Absolutely.
We were seeding the market for launching itolizumab under the brand name Alzumab. Nowadays, that is in the news because of its approval for the treatment of
COVID,
COVID.
COVID, right?
Yeah, we launched that at that time in 2012, I guess. 2011, we launched that product in immunotherapy division, primarily focusing on the dermatology segment,
Psoriasis, right?
psoriasis. So, um, but that it gave me an opportunity uh, to look at the business operations beyond the micros of sales or the micros of marketing aspects. A holistic view of business where sales matters, market growth matters, market share matters, profitability matters, inventory management matters,
Right,
total finance management matters.
right,
Um, so I mean, that was a good opportunity for me to, because I was evaluated on the success or failure of that division, because I was in charge of that division.
Correct.
Uh, but again, a good team, a mix of good brands. The challenges were the same because within dermatology, no one knew about Biocon.
I know. And Biocon, yes.
So the same story, but what we did was the selection of products. We took the challenge of selecting a path which was not beaten. We chose clinical dermatology
Okay.
to focus because most of the companies were having either a mix of clinical dermatology products and the cosmetology,
Hospitality, yes.
but we chose to focus only on clinical dermatology, where hardcore science is the first thing to be discussed with the doctor, because you have to establish your brand perception as Biocon.
Perfect. Yeah.
So we launched some of the immunosuppressants. The same process of establishing the concept is, talking science, and then seeding the market for the launch of itolizumab.
Right. Right. So,
So
please.
ideation, uh, complete operations, strategy. That was the first exposure for me to that segment. But I would say that it was a fairly good experience and journey for me there as well.
Excellent, Praveen. Excellent. So again, the basic tenets of marketing in super specialty kind of businesses: seed the market, prepare the market, do good, effective pre-marketing, build relations with clinicians prior to the launch, do an effective access strategy for your brand. Fifth would be to develop a great pricing value proposition for your brand. And sixth is obviously to understand the stakeholder management for all these businesses. So and very important point from a marketing standpoint is customer insights is very important, as you mentioned, without which you can't even start the process of brand marketing, because you should know what he's thinking about your brand, or where does he position the brand in his mind, what does he use for, etc. And taking that decision of getting only into clinical dermatology with respect to alzumab and not into the cosmetology. So you make a choice. I think what your message to marketers is, you not only do this groundwork, but you also have to take a choice. A strategy is to take a choice, right? That is, we will not play
Absolutely.
segment, but we will play only in this segment. Because very often pharma marketers try to be everything to everyone. They want to play in all the segments, take grab share from each of these segments, and then try to build a brand. So brand building is not about grabbing share from the segments, as we all know.
Absolutely.
It's about building a fundamental position in your identified segment of patients and physicians, and also build a strong brand in that particular segment, right? So I think that's very important what you've just said, and I'm only summarizing it for our audience as take homes, because at the end of the day, that is what matters, right? This is great, and this is what was the primary focus of our discussion. But let's now get into the this last part of our conversation, and we would I respect your time, Praveen. How do you think pharma marketing has evolved over the last 2 decades that you have been in the industry? Just your thoughts around it.
Yeah.
What do you feel good, what do you don't feel good? I mean, you can tell us so that it's a message.
Right. I think a very palpable difference, uh, which I have observed, is uh, in that a change in the target audience. Earlier days, we used to talk about the brand and the doctors. With the healthcare landscape changing, where non-medical stakeholders also becoming important, the strategies have also, you know, have also started, evolving around that. Um, the the concept of individual hospitals started coming down, and the concept of chain of hospitals, big corporate hospitals, have increased. So the importance of building a brand as a corporate also has
Yes.
increased.
Right.
Strategies like co-branding, uh, partnering with the different corporate chain of hospitals in patient outreach programs.
Right.
So that way, a change in outlook has come in terms of identifying your target audience. It's nowadays it is beyond clinicians also.
Absolutely.
That is one in terms of addressing who all come in that list of target audience. The second one is of course the shift from the conventional platform to the digital platform has come. I'm talking about overall. If you speak about super specialty, one major change in the strategy or the marketing approach I have seen is beyond what the brand offers. We have started focusing on value additions like companion diagnostics,
Right.
bundling strategies,
Right.
where along with your core brand, you are offering benefits like the other co-treatment products or diagnostic tests.
Yes.
So bundling strategies, uh, that is a big shift in approach I am seeing.
Right. Excellent.
uh, so I mean, but it also comes with a worry that I think nowadays the strategies are becoming more short term.
Right.
It's I mean, if I can take an analogy from our day-to-day life, we started loving the 2020 more
Right.
than the conventional test cricket, I guess.
Right. Right. Right.
So
So that's your kind of a worry that it's becoming more of a T20 kind of a game and trying to make it more short term rather than building out a brand. And your message would be don't get into the short term, but actually build out the brand for a long term period. Right?
absolutely,
You would
absolutely, it'll
say
pay
that
off.
for minimum 2 years is what you would recommend, 2 to 3 years
Absolutely,
planning for your brand.
absolutely.
That's
And I would say there should be a central theme which runs, like you said, beyond a year or 2 years, and then you build around that.
build around that, yes, and you can build around the expansion of indications or expanding into new doctor specialty areas or building or trying to drive greater access or trying to drive value realization through, say, maybe a health economics kind of a platform for your brand and not just look at it from a short term perspective. No, this is great.
Absolutely,
Again, your messages is you can do a lot around brand building for your target brands in terms of partnering with associations, in terms of product bundling, in terms of companion diagnostics, and thinking of what value services that you can package for the molecule and not just sell the brand but beyond the pill or beyond the brand itself is what you're saying, and think long term. Excellent, Praveen.
absolutely.
The great take homes that our audience would take. My last couple of questions, Praveen, is you're now with Sayre, which is again for the last 6 years in terms of head, senior vice president for marketing, sales, commercialization. It's been a very successful stint because I know Sayre has now established itself as novel onco-therapeutics company, headed by a leader who is also very much highly acknowledged oncology domain specialist like you, and more importantly, differentiated products, differentiated delivery platforms, licensed molecules. How has it been and what's been your experience? We would love to hear that. And that's a great strategy as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The drive for joining a startup was to be a part of the experience of starting up a company,
Right.
operationalizing it,
Right.
and taking it forward. Um, but it also comes with a lot of challenges because Sayre, again, no one knew. The same, we experienced a different kind of response from the same, you know,
Doctors.
doctors or institutions when we were representing our previous organization. The response was their behavior was completely different. And when we represented
Right.
Sayre, I mean, the first question is Sayre who?
Sayre.
So, so, so I mean, it was interesting because you have to first establish your credibility.
Absolutely.
Of course, your track record, your previous, organizations, your stint track record helps. But
That's about it.
as a new organization, as a part of Sayre, you have to re-establish yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And the only thing you have with you in your initial days to do that is the conviction you have in your ideas.
Right.
If you're successful in selling your ideas, your concept, and if the customer feels that there is value or there is benefit in believing or trusting them, that's the point when they will start engaging with you.
Right. Right.
So I mean, the industry is very dynamic. The same customer, the doctors will be seeing many other organizations coming up, interacting with them, telling stories. But how do they differentiate us? How do they trust us?
Right.
There should be sense and value in what you're talking. So
Absolutely.
we focused on bringing in licensed assets, differentiated molecules. But what we also did was we didn't limit there. We wanted to do a complete treatment continuum, means in especially in oncology and immunology where we are focusing, treatment, diagnostics, delivery platforms, all are three critical aspects.
Yes.
Because in chemotherapy or cancer treatment, the diagnostic tests are also equally important, where there are tests nowadays in predicting whether the patient will respond to a particular treatment.
Or not. Yes.
Yeah, where the patient will progress after a particular period of time. So there is merit in focusing on those molecular diagnostic tests also as an offer to the patients.
Right.
And then delivery platforms like uh, TARE, transarterial radioembolization therapy, which is again not available in India, but we partnered with a global organization and we are doing a special access program for that. So our idea has to be different. It has to be unique, differentiated.
Right.
So the focus on these three, important factors have helped us you know, in gaining more face time with the customers.
Right. Right. So essentially, the first three steps of the patient journey map that we used to always talk about: diagnosis, treatment, and the
Absolutely,
delivery of the treatment to the patient,
absolutely,
treating it as an ecosystem, so that you get the face time with the customer, you get a great relationship going with the customer. He sees you differently, and patients are also then bundled into that ecosystem right from the time of diagnosis, treatment, handholding, and giving him the diagnostics and the entire support infrastructure. And
true,
and it's been a great learning journey for you, I guess, in this.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right. That's interesting, Praveen. Praveen, I think it's been great talking to you, over the last 45 odd minutes in trying to understand your life journey or career, which started off in sales for a significant period of time, moving into marketing role of a small business unit, P&L, which set you up for success for eventually the big piece of oncology at Biocon, which was a great ride, as you mentioned, for almost a decade. And then you obviously decided to get into a startup because you felt that you apply those learnings and then successfully launch it on the fundamental platforms of creating ecosystems for patients, rather than just focus on selling the drug or the access, but the whole from diagnosis to treatment. It's been amazing learning from you, Praveen, because I think as I heard you and as I've summarized the points for our viewers, one thing is clear: you can't have this, the same course for the same kind of, therapy. You need to customize it. You need to have a different approach depending on what kind of a stage of the life cycle you are and what steps you need to do. I think one of the other important points you mentioned is pre-marketing is important. Building relations, connects with customers, talking science, building the marketing platform is so very important. I think it's been great having you, Praveen. I want to sincerely thank you for your time. And it's fantastic having interacted with one of the most respected oncology business leaders in our industry, because I know that you've had a tremendous track record in the oncology space. Thanks so much for your time. And the last couple of minutes, any closing messages for our audience in terms of, because our audience is essentially our marketeers, upcoming marketeers, even business heads, if you would want to just throw in a couple of last sign-off messages from your end.
Sure, definitely. Again, from my experience and my learning, something which has worked for me was every year I used to walk up to, at the end of the year, I used to walk up to my boss and I used to ask for, is there something new I could do? More work. But my boss used to ask me, have you done what you were given already? Have you done that well? Well, I mean, I had the proof. I had done that part well, and then I used to walk up to him and ask for that. So never hold yourself back from challenging yourself by taking up more responsibility.
Excellent.
Don't limit yourself to what you are comfortable with.
Very good. Very nice.
That is one learning. The other thing I wanted to tell is that orient yourself towards formulating a business acumen. If you want to grow up the ladder, learn to see 3 or 4 years ahead. Work on the basics, customer insights, value addition to the end customer, the patients, taking care of the whole ecosystem, the whole stakeholders. Basics. But as a business leader, you have to be able to foresee a few years ahead. That's very critical. And keep an open mind to adapting to changing times, changing technologies.
Right. Thank you so much, Praveen. Wonderful take homes. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure interacting with you, Praveen.
My pleasure.
Again, thanks so much for your time. And, we are extremely grateful that you could be with us today. Thanks a lot. And
thank you so much. I
have a
should
great
thank
day.
you. I should thank you. And please stay safe. Challenging times, we all fight it together out.
Absolutely. Stay
Great
safe,
you.
Praveen, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.